But is any of you guys using computers with something else like uh, amateur radioing or putting like Arduino with some stuff to do or uh,
Farney and Bob both use amateur radio stuff.
I'm using SDR software. And oh, forget the acronyms. It's
Software
I can
defined
describe
radio.
the system. The rig, the transmitter and receiver is a box. There are no knobs on it. There's one switch, and you push the switch to turn it on, and you push the switch again to turn it off. It's got lots of antenna connections and coax connections on the back. It's got a connection for a microphone and the speakers and so on. And it's on the network, on the local network. And so what happens, the signal comes in on the antenna, and when it hits the box, it goes through an analog to digital converter and goes back to the network again. The network takes it to the computer. In the computer, all the reception of the signal occurs, only it's digital. And the last thing that happens, it goes back on the network to the box. And in the box, it's converted from digital to analog. And then it goes from there out on the coax to the antenna. And so basically in receiving, that's all that the receiver does. And transmitting is exactly the opposite. The signal is all generated in the computer, and when it goes back to the box, it goes through a 100-watt amplifier that amplifies it. It converts it from digital to analog, and then amplifies it and kicks it out on the antenna. And it is absolutely fantastic. And not too many of you, Bob will understand this, and several of you, but most of you probably won't. But the amateur radio operators have to work in very strict frequency limits, and they're called frequency bands. And I've had an amateur license since 1946. And one of the nicest bands that I like working with the digital radio is the 40-meter band, which is from 7 megahertz to 7.3 megahertz. That's the frequency range. It's not very big, it's 300 kilohertz. And I never operated too much on it before I had the digital equipment, because there were so many stations in there, so many people were in there, and there were some broadcast bands which they've basically gotten rid of, but it was just like a pig pen with everything squealing and peeling and all the signals on top of each other, and even with a good rig. And with the digital radio, I can start in at one end of the 40-meter band and tune the whole band and go through the whole thing and get a full quieting on practically every signal that's there, and all separated out and everything else. Now, one of the biggest problems is up till now, you've used oscillators in both receivers and transmitters. And the oscillators have to be filtered out so that you just have the frequency that you need. But when you mix frequencies, you get out the two basic frequencies that you mixed, and then you get a signal from the sum of those frequencies, and you get one from the difference between the two frequencies, and then you can get harmonics on top of that. And if these things get loose in either the receiver or the transmitter, they start to produce signals all over the place. And that's where a lot of the interference comes from. And in the digital version, there are no oscillators. The reception is direct, frequency is direct, and so they get rid of all the oscillators that are creating problems. It's quite the thing. And on the when you're using the computer, you look at the screen, and your screen is divided into two parts. It's got the part on the right-hand side, and that's got all the controls on it that you would normally get on the equipment. And then across the rest of it is a big panoramic display that shows horizontally across it the frequency spectrum, and that can be adjusted anywhere from below the broadcast band to way up in the TV bands. And you can look at any frequency anywhere if you want. And but you have this panoramic display, and the signals on it look like Christmas trees, and quite narrow. You can make them wide or narrow depending upon the sensitivity. But all these, your spectrum shows a noise level across the screen, and then coming up out from there are these little Christmas trees, and each Christmas tree is a signal. And so if you want to tune a signal, you just take the mouse and stick the cursor on the signal and click the mouse, and presto, there you're tuned in. And you've got you can control it by rolling the wheel in the mouse. You can control it by moving the mouse, or I've got another little control that will allow you to spin a knob and run through frequency. But this is modern communications, and the one that I use is a Flex radio, and they're made in Texas, not in China. And I guess the Flex company is so busy making equipment for the American forces and the American government that it's almost full time for Flex. And there are several companies, there are several other companies making them now too. At any rate, that's for amateur radio on there. And the guys can tell you about APRS and a whole bunch of stuff. But also I have a weather station, a good one. And I can tell you just about anything you want to know about the weather. And my printer is on the network. And there's several computers on it. And I got a very busy network. At any rate, there's a little trip into my shack.
Cool.